It was one of those evenings that seemed to hold promises in the air. Soft golden lights flickered across the cafe windows. The streets glimmered with rain, and the city hummed with quiet anticipation. Amelia sat by the window of the Velvet Bean, nervously tracing circles on her coffee cup. Her friends had convinced her to go on this blind date after months of heartbreak and silence. She had been told that the man was handsome, charming, and successful, a man who might finally help her believe in love again. But as she waited, staring at her reflection in the glass, something in her heart trembled, a quiet whisper asking if she was truly ready to meet someone new, or if she was just trying to fill an emptiness that love had left behind. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, and second chances, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who still believes that love can surprise us in the most unexpected ways. The cafe's door chimed softly, and Amelia's heart jumped. Every time it opened, she looked up with hope and tension. She had dressed simply but beautifully, a cream-colored dress, a touch of perfume, and hair that fell over her shoulders like a quiet wave. She wanted to look confident, but her hands betrayed her. They shook slightly as she checked her phone again. The message from her friend replayed in her mind. "He's perfect, Amelia. A little shy, but incredibly good-looking. You'll thank me later." Half an hour passed. The once sweet excitement was now mixed with doubt. Maybe he wasn't coming. Maybe she'd been stood up again. Her heart began to sink when suddenly she noticed a shadow at the entrance. A man, hesitant, scanning the room. Her eyes followed him curiously. He wasn't the type she had imagined. Not tall, not dressed sharply, not the handsome stranger she'd built in her mind. His clothes were simple, his movements slightly awkward, and his face carried deep scars that ran from his cheek to his jawline. Amelia froze. She wanted to smile, but surprise held her still. The man, Ethan, walked toward her table slowly, with a nervous smile that was half hidden behind shyness and perhaps years of rejection. His eyes, however, were kind, soft, uncertain, but filled with something she couldn't name. He sat down quietly, his hands clasped tightly on the table. "You must be Amelia," he said softly. His voice carried warmth, but his posture carried fear, the fear of being judged again. In that moment, Amelia's heart twisted. She had expected confidence and charm, but what she saw was honesty and humility. Still, she struggled to hide the flicker of disappointment that crossed her eyes. Ethan noticed, of course. He always noticed such things. He had lived years seeing that same look on people's faces, the look of someone realizing he didn't fit their idea of beauty. The first few minutes were awkward. Amelia tried to smile, tried to ask questions, but she felt trapped between politeness and pity. Ethan spoke softly about his work, his love for animals, and his dream of opening a shelter someday. The more he talked, the more she found herself drawn to his sincerity. Yet her mind kept whispering that he wasn't what she expected. When the waiter brought dessert, Amelia noticed Ethan's hands trembling as he lifted the spoon. A scar stretched across his wrist, disappearing into his sleeve. She wanted to ask about it, but didn't. Instead, she asked how he got the scars on his face. He hesitated. "Car accident," he finally said, his voice almost fading. "It happened 3 years ago. I lost someone I loved that day." The world went still around them. The rain outside had started again, tapping against the glass like tears. Amelia felt something break open inside her. His words weren't dramatic, but they carried weight. A quiet pain of someone who had learned to live with loss, who had stopped expecting people to look beyond the surface. She looked at him again, this time differently. The scars no longer seemed like flaws. They were chapters of a story she hadn't heard yet. Beneath them was a man who had loved deeply, lost painfully, and still found the courage to show up, to hope again. The conversation softened. They talked about books, about places they'd never been, about moments that changed them. Amelia found herself laughing genuinely for the first time in months. And Ethan, who had entered the cafe with the fear of another rejection, found warmth in her eyes that reminded him of sunlight. Hours passed unnoticed. The cafe began to close, and they stepped outside into the night air. The city lights reflected in the puddles, painting the streets in gold and blue. As they walked, Ethan offered her his umbrella, though he was already getting soaked. Amelia smiled. "You'll get wet." He shook his head gently. "I've been through worse storms." Something in that sentence lingered in her heart. It wasn't just a comment. It was a truth, a quiet strength that came from surviving the kind of pain most people couldn't imagine. Days turned into weeks. They kept meeting, each time with less hesitation and more laughter. Amelia found herself waiting for his messages, smiling when his name appeared on her phone. Slowly, her mind stopped comparing him to anyone else. The scars that once startled her became invisible, replaced by the light in his eyes when he talked about life. But love stories rarely come without tests. One evening, they were invited to a small gathering by Amelia's friends. She hesitated, nervous about introducing him to people who didn't know his story. Her mind battled between pride and fear that they might judge him the way she once had. When Ethan arrived, dressed in his simple best, she saw how some of her friends exchanged silent looks, the same shallow glances she had once given. It burned her deeply, because now she understood what that look could do to someone's heart. She stood beside him, her hand trembling slightly before she reached for his, and held it firmly. In that single gesture, Ethan's eyes softened, and something unspoken passed between them. A promise. She would never be the person who looked away again. After the party, they sat by the riverside. The night was quiet, the reflection of the bridge lights rippling on the water. Ethan turned to her and said, "You know, I almost didn't come that first day. I thought, why meet someone new when people only see what's outside? But I told myself, maybe this time, someone will see my heart before my face." Tears filled Amelia's eyes. "And I almost walked away," she admitted, "because I was blind too, just in a different way." They sat in silence, the kind that heals more than words. Months passed. Love, slow and gentle, grew between them like dawn breaking through fog. Amelia no longer remembered what handsome meant in the way she once did. To her, beauty had found a new definition, one carved by pain, courage, and truth. One evening, Ethan took her to a quiet hill where the city stretched out below like a sea of light. The wind was soft, and the sky glowed with fading amber. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small, simple ring. "I don't have much to give," he said, his voice trembling. "But I have honesty, and I have love that won't run away when life gets hard." Amelia's tears spilled freely. "That's all I ever wanted." When he slipped the ring on her finger, it wasn't a fairy tale. It was something real, something raw, something built from the kind of truth that doesn't fade when beauty does. Their wedding was small, held in the same cafe where they first met. The owner had kept their table aside, calling it the Miracle Corner. As they exchanged vows, Amelia remembered that night. The girl who once waited for a handsome stranger and found a beautiful soul instead. After the ceremony, Ethan whispered, "You once said you were looking for someone who could make you believe in love again. Did you find him?" She smiled, her eyes glistening. "I didn't just find him. I found myself too." Years later, when people saw them walking hand in hand through that same city, they didn't see scars or perfection. They saw two people who had chosen love over appearances, forgiveness over judgment, and kindness over fear. Because sometimes the most beautiful faces are the ones marked by life, and the most powerful love stories begin when expectations break. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Your support helps us continue bringing stories that remind the world that kindness still exists and love can heal even the deepest wounds. And before you go, tell us in the comments, what does true beauty mean to you? Amelia and Ethan's story isn't just about love. It's about seeing people with your heart, not your eyes. Because when we look beyond the surface, we find the kind of beauty that lasts forever.